Coming up on Network Africa. Senegal confirms second coronavirus case. U.S. President tells Egypt, Washington to pursue efforts to deal on Ethiopia dam. Cameroonian army denies soldiers arrested for killing more than 20 civilians. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. Our coverage of the coronavirus outbreak today begins in Senegal, where a second person is tested positive. The country's health ministry says the patient is an 80-year-old Frenchman who arrived in the West African country on February 29. He's being treated at the same hospital for infectious diseases in the capital city, Dakar, where another Frenchman was hospitalized for coronavirus last week. News of this second confirmed case in Senegal brings the total number of confirmed cases on the African continent to 12. Other countries with patients who tested positive for the virus are Algeria with 5 people, Egypt 2 people, Morocco 1 person, Nigeria 1 person, and Tunisia 1 person. Meanwhile, pharmacies in Dakar are rationing the number of surgical masks they are selling to customers as the country deals with 2 coronavirus cases. Some say they are short of surgical masks and hand sanitizers, but on the streets, residents say there is some panic, but it does not appear to be widespread.
Some pharmacies in Senegal's capital, Dakar, say they are short on surgical masks and hand sanitizers. But residents say that there was no great panic after the country's first coronavirus case was confirmed.
They want a lot of masks for the whole family, and they also prefer 500 milliliter sanitizers, and we are running out of some products.
On Tuesday, a virologist at Dakar's Pasteur Institute said 3 more people were being tested for coronavirus. That's after authorities said a Frenchman who lives in Senegal had tested positive. He had returned from a skiing holiday in France on February the 26th via an Air Senegal flight. That prompted some, like medical students Angie Grace Belenga, to stock up on supplies.
You need to completely protect yourself, so that is why I'm here at the pharmacy. But unfortunately, they don't have any antibacterial gel.
On Dakar streets, some could be seen wearing masks. But this, its manager says, the panic does not seem to be too serious for now. Though he said that his co-workers won't shake hands for fear of spreading the virus. Others, such as the students, Claude Derlini Ndonda, say they are not confident Senegal is prepared to contain the spread of the virus, despite reassurances from the president, Macky Sall, that it was.
We don't think Senegal is ready, because what measures is Senegal taking in relation to this? And if it spreads, are they going to declare it as China did right from the start?
Senegal's case is the second in sub-Saharan Africa after another confirmed in Nigeria recently.
Well, here in Nigeria, state governments across the country are implementing measures to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. So far, the virus is still limited to the index case, who has spent 6 days in isolation at a center in Lagos. Our next report takes a look at precautionary measures being put in place by Kwara, Kano, Ekiti and the Ogun state government.
As Kwara State in north-central Nigeria joins other activating emergency centres for coronavirus cases, it's putting other measures in place, one of which is to educate students in public schools on the importance of hand washing and personal hygiene. Meanwhile, the state is adopting a multi-sectoral approach to ensure effective surveillance at all points of entry at the borders.
I wish to assure all residents of Kwara State that we have been beefing up our preparedness capabilities since the first confirmation of the case in China, and we will use all the resources available at the state to ensure that COVID-19 is prevented in Kwara State.
Kano State in the northwest has reinforced personnel for screening of passengers coming from outside the country at the Aminu Kano International Airport. While some are happy with the process, others believe it's cumbersome.
It's actually better than I had in Ethiopia because we didn't get any check like physically in Ethiopia.
Saudi Arabia has banned their visas for entry visa for 2 months because of the disease, coronavirus.
In Ogun State, southwest Nigeria, the African regional head of the World Health Organization is commending the state government's action in tracing and isolating about 40 contacts linked to the index case, promising that the WHO will develop an incident action plan to improve preparedness.
Every state needs to be ready. Diseases don't announce themselves. They don't give you an information they're coming. So it's important we are ready to be able to respond.
The state governor, Dapo Abiodun, also announced that the state is contemplating establishing a biosecurity center.
The next steps for us, we are trying to ensure that our isolation center is well equipped and ready, not just for this, but for any eventuality. And that center is being set up at the Olabisi Onabanjo University Teaching Hospital in Shagamu. I have also directed that my Commissioner for Health, having met with the counterpart in Lagos a few times.
Staying in the southwest, in Ekiti State, a 40-man COVID-19 task force has been set up under the leadership of Governor Kayode Fayemi. The team has set up emergency operation centers in motion, as well as the provision of protective equipment for health workers.
Speaking of precautionary measures, Kenya is the first African country to suspend direct flights from 2 cities in northern Italy over concerns about the spread of coronavirus. Tunisia and Nigeria are dealing with confirmed cases involving patients who had traveled from Italy. Health Minister Muta Kagwe says the decision was reached following consultations with the Italian embassy. But the World Health Organization says that issuing travel advisories to countries with confirmed cases will not help reduce the probability of an outbreak. Last week, Kenya also suspended direct flights from China. African airlines have lost $400 million since the outbreak of the coronavirus in China. That's according to the global airline industry body. The epidemic is not as widespread in Africa as in other continents, but it has led airlines like South African Airways, Air Tanzania, Air Mauritius, Egypt Air, Rwanda Air and Kenya Airways to suspend flights to and from China. The continent's largest airline, Ethiopian Airlines, is still operating flights to and from 5 cities in China. Vice President of the International Air Transport Association, Raphael Kuchi, says the losses in the continent's aviation industry had so far come from suspended and cancelled flights en route to China. To other stories now, U.S. President Donald Trump has reassured Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi of his support with regard to the ongoing dispute over the River Nile being built in Ethiopia. Washington has been hosting talks between Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan, but Ethiopia skipped the latest round of negotiations last week and has accused the U.S. of overstepping its role as a neutral observer. Reports say President Trump held a phone conversation with President Sisi on Tuesday about the $4 billion mega dam project, which will be Africa's biggest hydroelectric power plant upon completion. The U.S. says the dam should not be completed without agreement between Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt, which relies on the River Nile for 90% of its water. Well, Washington has been enabling the talks between Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan to resolve issues over the River Nile dam, set to become the largest hydropower plant in Africa. But Ethiopia is accusing the United States of being undiplomatic. VOA's correspondent in Cairo, Edward Yeranayan, joins us now to discuss more about the River Nile dispute. Ed, the call between U.S. President Donald Trump and the Egyptian president seems to have just put fuel in the fire between Ethiopia and Egypt. What exactly was discussed?
Well, Tenny, the White House statement indicated very briefly, at least reported by our Voice of America, that the president assured Mr. Sisi, President Sisi of Egypt, that he hoped that an agreement would be reached quickly and that it would benefit both parties. I don't know what more was said. Obviously, they're not disclosing other things that may have been discussed. Part of the problem, I think, is that many media organizations seem to be supporting Ethiopia on this. I'm not sure why. I don't think it's clear either way who's right and who's wrong. I think it's just a matter of whose interests are involved. And some of these statements you see on the internet, there are people coming from agencies that don't like Egypt and from people that don't like Egypt. So I think we have to be careful what we conclude from these statements.
Yeah, but why is this issue so contentious, though? Last year, a deadline of January 15 was set to solve the long-standing impasse, but the latest round of talks last week ended in a deadlock. What's the main issue here?
The main issue is how quickly Ethiopia is allowed an agreement to fill the basin of the dam. Now, Egypt has an historic agreement dating from 1932, when Britain was still involved in the region, saying that it has 55 billion cubic meters of water per year from the Nile, and including Sudan, which was part of Egypt in 1932. So I'm not sure how that actually breaks down today. But Ethiopia has been hoping to fill the dam more quickly. Now, I could give you the water figures as to what the U.S. was proposing and what Egypt was asking and what Ethiopia would like. Ethiopia basically would like to fill it more quickly. I think in terms of years and avoiding the complicated mathematical figures, Ethiopia would like to fill the dam in 3 to 5 years. And I think Egypt probably more like 7 to 10. They've said even 12 to 13, but I think that's just a negotiating tactic. They're willing to go.
Yeah, Ed, Ethiopia seems eager to move on with this, but they skipped the latest round of negotiations last week, accusing the U.S. of overstepping its role as a neutral observer. What happens now? Just very quickly, are the talks likely to go ahead?
I don't think Ethiopia or Egypt have an interest in stepping out. I think both countries are dependent on Ethiopia gets something like $1 million a year, and I think like $1.3 billion.
Seems we're having issues with your network there, Ed. Thank you so much for joining us. And, you know, it's interesting we were able to get some thoughts from you on that. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. Still ahead on the program. Driving lorries, blasting rocks, women break the mold at Burkina Faso gold mines. We'll bring you details after the break. Stay with us.